After a long day of watching and then analyzing far too many chess games from the World Rapid Chess Championship in Moscow, it's time for some videos to make their way to the Chess.com fans. Now, I want to talk about one of the men who tied for second, third, slash fourth in Moscow, and it's not Alireza Firouzja or Hikaru Nakamura in this video, but Russia's rising star Vladislav Artemiev. A lot of attention going to Jan Nepomniachtchi right now, rightfully so, for his win in the Jerusalem Grand Prix and qualification for the candidates. And of course, Kirill Aleksenko is one of the brightest stars in Russia's future, who just got the candidates wildcard nod. But Vladislav Artemiev continues to impress, especially in Rapid and Blitz. He made it all the way to the 2019 semifinals in the Speed Chess Championship, where he lost to Wesley So. But this guy got a huge victory here over Maxime Vachier-Lagrave on day 3, and perhaps this was the game that ultimately secured that he would be finishing in the top 5. Let's dive in and see not only what happened here in Artemiev's victory, but also get some educational takeaways, maybe some psychological points on what was going through Maxime Vachier-Lagrave's head when he decided to make the dubious queen sack that's coming up. If I didn't Tarantino enough of what's going to happen in this video lecture, then that's probably a you problem at this point. Let's get going. So, we start out with some traditional theory here, knight f3 and b3. Artemiev plays a lot on Chess.com in our Title Tuesday events and just lots of blitz and bullet. And I wouldn't say he has quite the full Hikaru Nakamura blitz rapid repertoire, but you see him dabble in these types of ready, I guess, non-traditional d4, e4, c4 kind of systems. This one does eventually transpose in a few moves to something that is a pretty mainstream ready. After natural development here, e6 and now c4, we're in a borderline kind of neo-Catalan symmetrical English kind of system. Might be classified as a hedgehog as well. Bishop e7, double Rekharovka, and after knight to c3, we see Maxime trying to play one of the more direct and challenging lines. Now, obviously, Maxime is a good friend of mine, and we know the Frenchman is a little frustrated right now by not making the candidates. But overall, he was still in a position to finish right there at the top going into day 3. And I wonder if maybe he could have had a slightly more flexible approach here. He goes, rather than, let's say, a d6, these would be hedgehog type of systems you get. After d6, white, of course, has two main options, d4, where the capture can happen with the queen, or, of course, the standard rook e1 ideas where e4 is coming, and sometimes black will even play knight e4 to stop it. Nothing wrong with d5 per se, but going into very, very straightforward lines against the well-prepared young Russian just didn't seem to work out today. e3, knight c6, and then c takes, knight takes. All of this theory leads to a position where white is kind of in control of whether you want to simplify the game or even mix it up. Black's approach here in the game was a borderline novelty by MVL. Rook a to d8 is the most standard move, and I'll show that the same type of tactic that occurred in the game doesn't have nearly as much bite for white, because after knight e5, queen d6, if you go for the same variations of taking on c5, here white has to deal with the tempi on the queen because of the rook being released here on the d file, so not something that is just going to be winning material for white. In the game, though, with the rook on c8, the biggest issue is that on knight e5, if queen d6 is played, let's say, taking c5, there is no queen takes c5 anymore in a position like this where white has a million ways to start gaining time and actually just win material. Also note knight d7 is an immediate fork that probably does the same. So with that, you would have to maybe trade on d1, but then the trade happens, white wins the bishop on b7 and heads to an endgame where the bishop pair combined with a very, very open position, very easy structure to play for white. This is just a clear edge in the endgame. And so it's this forcing line that sort of forced Maxime's hand, I think, to go for the craziness that he did here. And again, it's not necessarily a tilt. It is rapid. I think that Maxime was trying to mix it up and create a mess, knowing either that he had already messed up with rook a to c8, or perhaps he was already planning on going for something crazy all along, like I said, because he's just maybe looking to have a little fun there in Moscow in this faster time control tournament. But I'm trying to justify, as you can see, it's sort of a long-winded approach, because there's really no way to say that the move played in the game, queen takes g2, is a good queen sacrifice. I'd love to stick a clickbaity thumbnail on this video and tell you that MVL has a sexy queen sack or even a dubious queen sack, but I don't even consider it flashy enough or blundery enough to be reasonable of highlighting it as the main point. I think it's just a bad line for black, and ultimately Maxime has just lost very quickly. So again, was it rook a to c8 that was the small mistake before that? My phone's ringing. I'm going to silence that. Hashtag blooper reel. Those of you who actually watched the video will get to see that. Was it rook a to d8? Did he just forget the line? Was rook a to c8 with the intention of doing something else on 95, and then he had to change his mind? But as I said, any of the passive queen moves that go for these dc5 variations just leave white with an easy position, the bishop pair, and kind of a clear edge. So have a really hard time trying to figure this one out. Maxime plays queen takes g2, and after king takes, knight takes e5. The simple truth is that f3 is just not enough, right? You'd love if somehow the king was forced to move, and here comes knight f3 check, and let me get another discovered check, and just keep the train rolling if I can with a party on the light squares. But none of that is meant to be when white can just play the move f3. Hey, that rhymed. C takes d4, bishop takes d4, knight back to c6, bishop c3, bishop g5, queen e1. Again, a lot of this stuff here was pretty straightforward, but just showed that Artemiev is not intimidated by any of the big name players in the world, and not going to mess around once he has a big advantage. Rook to d1, this is exactly the kind of technique you want to see. Simplify and trade off pieces when you're up a ton of material. Note that even here, he plays the most accurate move, e4, which forces either black to concede the d file or to make the trade he doesn't want to play. Of course, taking here is still totally winning for white. I'm not going to try to overdo the point. But when you take here and change the structure, I think that it's unnecessary. It opens up the e-file for bishop c5. Maybe the rook comes to the e-file. And I just think it's good to see really accurate stuff. e4. Now I can infiltrate along the 7th rank. The d-file is mine. Rook f2. Again, there's just nothing fancy coming here from Maxime. Bishop b2 is threatening bishop a3 in a lot of positions, as well as using the d-file. Here comes a trade of rooks. Now, knight c2 was the last-minute trick, of course, by Maxime. If you take c8, there's knight e3 fork, followed by taking the queen, and suddenly black is actually winning. But as we see, a simple move, tucking the king away, where there will be no harm and no checks, was easy enough. The trade happens, and then bishop takes e5. Maxime resigns, because taking with the rook hangs the knight, and doing anything else allows the bishop to creep its way to d6, followed by Bob's your uncle over here on f8. So, again, not necessarily the flashiest game, but I wanted to highlight games by all the players who finished here amongst the top 4, meaning Magnus Carlsen, Alireza Firouzja, Hikaru Nakamura, and here Vladislav Artemiev. We'll have videos on all those guys coming up. If you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, there's a plug to do so. But the main thing I wanted to say was that, again, it was just mainline theory, punishes his opponent for an inaccuracy, and flawless technique, right? This guy is again a star you need to take note of. Pretty soon going to be getting top results in the biggest events in the world, not just in Rapid and Blitz. You can mark my words. And Vladislav Artemiev, congratulations on finishing in the three-way tie for second place.